Yeah, so that is so now the Hive to kind of catch everyone up. If you're just joining us, we'll go with broad strokes. We've gone through the first two of five total sets of verses about the story of the Hive and Oryx. They started as weak krill that die and live short lives at the bottom of a giant, super massive gas giant, and they have arisen through making a pact with these worm gods to the point where they now dominate and own not only that planet but all the moons surrounding it. So it's the beginning of their conquest, and now these Hive gods have discovered the true power, or the beginning of true power, that they can have through these relationships that they have with their worms and their worm gods, and now they will transform and become something different, which leads us into this next verse.
Indeed. Verse 3:0, Hive. Let us speak of the terrible beauty of becoming ourselves. In the beginning we rode hollow moons from star to star. Oryx said, become as numerous and fertile as seeds in rich flesh, and thus we did become numerous. Shuvorath said, become as hungry and defiant as tumors in rich flesh, and thus we became cancerous. Savathun said, drink of the poisons of the worm, so that you might feed on death. And we did feed. This was preparation for our crusades. Ayah, we were thus becoming. A mother wizard gets fertility from a mate, or from herself. From the wizards the spawn, from the spawn our thrall. From the survivors our acolytes who contend. If they contend well, their worm is fed, and from a well-fed worm comes the knights and wizards and princes. This is us, and our purpose is liberation. Our great task is the worship and admiration of freedom. Our great hunger is to pursue and eat that which is not free and liberate it with devouring. Ayat, this is us, we, the Hive. So big card because it's describing how all of this stuff works.
The complete power structure and the way that the Hive is arranged and how the Hive ascend.
And the crazy thing is, this is redefined again by Oryx in a system of tithing when he does finally become the Taken King. Because keep in mind,
yeah, exactly, the giant, the tribute trail with him sitting at the top.
And it's well worth noting that at this point, technically, Oryx is Aurix, not O-R-Y-X, but A-U-R-Y-X. So it's still sort of a different person at this individual point. They haven't really obtained the mantle of Taken King, because they don't have the power to take just yet. It's something we'll learn about in these verses, and this is where stuff gets very interesting. But some really cool notes about this. In the beginning, we rode hollow moons from star to star. This is a practice known as war moons in Hive, and literally it is giant moons that they take with their fleets. Giant planets that they hollow out and use as nests and bases. Keep in mind, the moon is being hollowed out by the Hive as we speak. Gives you a vague idea of what it looks like when a big F-off Hive fleet approaches. I have this amazing idea that if Savathun or Shivoraf does finally arrive, they may bring an explorable destination with them in the form of a Hive moon. So
yes, dude. Oh my god, that would be
we may
awesome.
just get like a random planet show up that isn't even part of a solar system. Like maybe they'll blow up Pluto and replace it with this thing.
With another planet. It's possible, and I guess like from a creative director's standpoint, thinking about that is, since the planet doesn't have to be native to anything we know, it can be anything. They could design it to be literally anything, which is incredible.
I mean, forget about a dreadnought. Think of a whole Hive planet. What does that look like after it's spent millennia in space being honed and crafted by them? You know, it's a perfect environment for them. Totally brutal to us, but you can see on these war moons how the Hive are starting to develop. You know, they're starting to develop their sort of aggressive nature, and all of this sort of gets explained a little bit more later down the line in the cards. So the next one is an incision, verse 3:1. Saith Aurix, my siblings, our children, are scattered across many moons, and we live in the cold dark between suns. What will we eat? How will we speak? Savathun said, Oryx, my brother and king. I have studied the wounds cut by the worms our gods. Also I have studied the manner of your death and return. These two things are the same, for they are predicated on death and the passage through cut spaces. Let us practice the sword logic until we are sharp. We may then cut our own wounds and step through. But Shiva said, Sister, I am already sharp. Look, my sword cuts into another space, and she cut her way between the moons through green fire and joyous screams. 3 kingdoms grew swollen in the sword space. They were the gaze and glory of Oryx, the cunning and knowledge of Savathun, the triumph and brawn of Shiva-Arath. These kingdoms were created from the minds and worms of our lords. They were coterminous with all spaces consecrated by our hive. Through these spaces passed speech and food, and all the moons were bound close. Saith Oryx, this is where I went when I died. Let us establish our thrones here, for I am Oryx, the first navigator, and I shall chart death, and my throne shall be carved of osmium. So this is a really cool card, because this is the first point at which they're like, okay, the sword space references the Netherverse. We can make our own throne worlds greater by expressing it through the sword logic. So I think the most important line of all of this is, they were the gaze and glory of Oryx, the cunning and knowledge of Savathun, the triumph and brawn of Shiva-Arath. Because a throne world, when you look at it, is literally not, it's not just a physical space within the Netherverse, it is the embodiment of the will of that individual. Everything that you see within Crota's End is there because Crota wills it. And it exists because it is Crota's very own spirit and embodiment. That's why the sky is green, and it's why you can see a wretched moon where his oversoul is. This is all the sort of detail that's fleshed out in there, and it's how the sword realms start to define themselves individually. So, I mean, it would be the same case for Oryx eventually, but his throne world eventually ends up becoming the Dreadnought, so we don't get to see what it really looked like. Yeah. But it's a very fascinating point to note that, you know, the 3 realms grew as their individuals became stronger, because it shows how fundamentally different the Netherverse is from physical reality, right?
Yeah.
In the Netherverse, thought and sword logic and paracausal power are the dominant force, whereas in our material universe, it's physical interaction or chemical or biological interaction. So let's put it this way.
Yeah.
You have those 2 powers working alongside each other in tangent, right? So I'm a warlock, I could throw a Nova Bomb, and that's an expression of paracausal power, right? That can still happen in the, you know, in reality within our material universe. If I'm in the Netherverse and I'm powerful enough, potentially I could will things into existence through thought if I was in my own sort of pocket of reality that I'd created. And that's really exciting because Toland is stuck in the Netherverse. And he is really strong-willed, I believe. So potentially he could be carving his own space out there right now. It's a really interesting point about how the universes work.
That's really interesting. I never made that thought. It's also really interesting and makes you feel even more badass is the fact that you went into one of these areas of existence and exerted your will in such a way that you conquered a being living inside of it.
Precisely.
Which,
I mean,
as a guardian,
yeah,
like, all of us became ascendant and gained the ability to force ourselves by will to exist in these spaces, which is just fucking awesome. So
exactly.
Cool.
Like you're exerting power over an individual that has existed for thousands of years and has the ability to create worlds and shape them according to their own demand. The whole oversoul thing that instantly kills you, that's literally Crota's will saying, I control this world, and if I see one of you die, I can make it so for the rest of you. There's great parallels you can talk about between Oversouls and the Oracles in the Vault of Glass, about how it is that paracausal power to say, I have a control, or at least a level of control over how your destiny is going to turn out. If I want you to die, I can make it happen by the snap of my fingers. The only reason why Crota, I think, is bound to the Oversoul and he needs to kill someone in order to make it happen is because he needs to prove he's stronger in order to justify doing it, because that's how the sword logic works. It's kind of a way of saying you need to prove that you are stronger.
So before we continue on, I got a question here. Or
Go
a
for it.
statement, which will be fun because we'll get to analyze this at the end, but I want to put it in everyone's minds now, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening, because there will be a discussion about this, but it's going to be right at the end. I don't think Oryx is dead. Dead, because every taken as a piece of them inside of him, Oryx could have found a way to cheat death in a sense and be reborn into something more powerful. We will address that, and actually, the verses themselves actually address that particular thought, but it is right at the end, so hang on.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Ooh, which is kind of scary. So the next card is called the High War, verse 3-2. Now, in this time of diaspora, there was a war between Oryx and Savathuna and Shivur-Arath. Brother Oryx, said Savathun, do not forgive my betrayal. Instead, take vengeance upon me for what I did at the dry moon. And Oryx made war on her in worship of the deep. Between them stood Shivur-Arath, saying, stop or I will kill you. War is mine, and I am strongest. This is how they worshipped. For 20,000 years they fought across the moons, and they fought each other on the abyssal plains and lightning palaces of each other's sword spaces. And they killed each other again and again, so they could practice death. Such was their love. At last the many moons came to many worlds, and it was time to go to war on life. Oryx said, I shall establish a court, and whoever comes into this court may challenge me. My court will be the High War. It will be a killing ground and a school of the sword logic. We have learned from our gods. Savathun thought this was a great idea. She made a court called the High Coven. Shivur-Arath said, the world is my court, wherever there is war. So basically, this is talking about how each of them is practicing the sword logic in their own ways. The High Court, or the High War, as Oryx puts it, is quite literally manifested in-game as the Court of Oryx.
It is exactly that. And when you look at the Grimoire, and this is my favorite connection, when you look at the Grimoire of all of the things that you kill there, they speak about how each one of the bosses and the enemies that you destroy inside of the Court of Oryx, how they are practicing sword logic, how they are hiding their own death from each other, or hiding death or practicing death in different ways. It is really incredible.
And, it even goes to the point at which some of them are kept around for some comical purposes. I think one of my favorite ones is... I think you may know which one I'm talking about. There's the Hive Wizard that constantly teleports, right? And the idea is that originally it comes as this sort of unidentified thing to the High War. And Crota is there, and he thinks, this is just a weak wizard, I can kill this, no problem, because it's an exercise, the sword logic. She keeps on teleporting away, and Crota keeps on trying to kill her, and he can't catch her. And so she's literally running circles, and Oryx thinks this is so hilarious that he actually offers that wizard that keeps teleporting that Crota can't kill a place in the High War. And, therefore, she's a boss in the Court of Oryx. And it's this continuous thread throughout all of the Court of Oryx stuff and the latest stuff about Oryx and Crota that he almost becomes this disappointing son. It's kind of like, you tried, Crota.
You did a good job.
You're beaten by an internet cable. You can't even catch this thing. It's just he's the embodiment of the incompetent son. Like it's brilliant in this sense, especially seeing as he's just such a menacing raid boss for us the first time around. But in comparison to Oryx, it just shows how
that's a point that comes out really strong later, is that Oryx is, as much as he's mad that we killed him because it's his son. He's still slightly relieved because Crota was an idiot. He's a fuck up. Yeah. He shouldn't have been able to be killed, by the logic of the Hive. That's why he was sent to kill us.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But the courts, all these different things. Savathun made a court called the High Coven, and Shivur-Arath said the world is my court wherever there is war. Savathun's coven is basically just a collection of witches or wizards who practice, trickery, etc. That's their practice of the sword logic. They put it to use. And Shivur-Arath is just like, hey, wherever there's war, I'm going to let people challenge me on the field of battle. So, directly stating that. But yeah, they fight for 20,000 years. So if ever someone's keeping track of time, you're now 20,000 years plus
20,000 ahead of the start of the story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something like 20,007, roughly. I don't know. Trying to keep track of all this is a little bit tough. Next is Fire Without Fuel. This is from Oryx's perspective, I believe.
I think so.
I killed my sister today. She came to this star to oversee the extermination of all life here. The Kugu are a strong power and their fleets protect 4 nearby stars. As herd animals, they are loyal and stubborn, but they do show grace. For millions of years of evolution, the Kugu have been affected by a virus so insidious that it wrote itself into their genome. The virus compels them to offer their limbs for amputation by enormous, sessile jaw beasts. They venerate these beasts and treat them as gods. The virus converts Kugu cells into eggs, from which strange crawling things pupate to live on the jaw beast's gut. In turn, the jaw beasts extrude sweet nectar for the Kugu to drink, and they have brilliant visions. Savathun and her broods have liberated the Kugu from jaw beasts, and indeed from existence. But as they chased the Kugu Ark ships, I stopped in to vaporize my sister's warship and a few of her underlings. I want to dwell on the ruins for a while and punish Savathun for failing to guard her flank. They are like us, these Kugu, bound in symbiosis. I feel joy and sorrow. I feel them as titanic things, because I am larger than my body. My mind is now a cosmos of its own. I know more joy and more anguish than the entire Kugu race could ever experience. Sorrow because we have killed so much, 18 species by this century alone. And joy for the same reason. Joy that we have put down these blights, scoured them away and left the universe clean, ready to move towards the final shape. We are the wind of progress, ripping parasites from the material world. For if they are not parasites, we would be unable to kill them, and they would still exist. And what is this final shape? Is it a fire without fuel, burning forever, killing death, asking a question that is its own answer, eternity itself? That is what we must become. My worm grows fat and hungry. I feed it with whole worlds. My astronomers tell me they can sense the deep itself, and that we are conquering our way towards it. I think joy and sorrow will be the same thing soon, like love and death. So for starters, they've been around for centuries, so this is the point at which we're starting to lose track of time, but 18 species have been killed in the century that this card has been recorded.
Yeah.
So by this point, the Hive are very much in that kind of form of existence where they're just going around and annihilating people. You know, the Ammonite was just the warm-up round. This is now the real playoffs, and they're crushing it. You know, 18 species just in this last century. Mm-hmm. They're a team favorite, they're the bookies' favorite, rather, to win the war of the final world, you know. Yeah. Sword logic be damned. These guys are going to go the full distance, man, the whole way. And that's it's also,
and we start to and inside of this there's the introduction of this concept where Oryx is beginning to experience the sorrow and starting to have these slight realizations of how much needs to be consumed in order to maintain the relationship that they have forged with these worm gods, which
indeed
kind of comes up immediately.
Very important in the next few cards, because there's a point at which it starts to break down quite a bit. Also worth noting is, what is it? There's the one line, yada yada yada. I'm trying to find exactly where it was in this card. Something about brilliant visions.
The Ugu the Ogu or Kugu having the brilliant visions from the nectar.
Not so much that, just about experiencing joy and sorrow. Oh yeah, I feel them as titanic things because I am larger than my body. My mind is a new cosmos of its own. That literally, it's expressing the fact that they've practiced the soul logic so much that his throne world, his netherverse, the embodiment of his mind, is vast. These things are literally small pocket universes unto themselves. where the Hive can just exist if needs be. So that's expressing kind of the power. They literally have the ability to shape the fabric of the universe according to their will. Which, yeah, crazy stuff by that point. The next one is the Scream. And this is a point at which that realization you were talking about how much it takes to feed the worms, suddenly it hits all three of the siblings. And it's a bit of a scary moment.
Yeah.
No, Savathun, Shivor Wrath, my siblings, we are betrayed. We will never live eternal. Our might shatters entire species. We inhale the smoke of their burning. This is our compact with the worm, our god. The worm makes us mighty. But as we wield this might, our worm's hunger expands. If we fail to feed it, it will devour us from within. We have exterminated 306 worlds, and now I am certain my worm's hunger grows faster than I might draw from it. Sorry, than the might I draw from it. My worm's hunger grows faster than the might I draw from it. We are bound by our covenant to obey our nature, eternal search, eternal cunning, eternal conquest. But as we do this, my siblings, we feed our worms. And the more we feed them, the hungrier they grow, faster and faster. Soon, my siblings, we will be so mighty and our worms so hungry that not with all our might could we possibly feed them, and we will be devoured. What can we do? And this is the point at which it's panic moment, and it comes at the scariest freaking time for them, because they're about to encounter the next sort of challenges, and these guys are no joke. Say hi to the Ecumen. This is the next card, which is known as Dictata Dakua, and reads as following. Keep in mind, this is about to get very weird, and this is...
these are basically, this card is like war transmissions from the Ecumen, basically describing battle movements. Yeah,
I'm going to post that in your stream, because you need to sort of see the card to understand some of it, because, you know, to give you... some of it is literally spoken as though you're doing lines of code. So it says, attention. Perimeter security units attend. Stand by to assimilate new imperatives. Gland 60 proof assimilation liquor or face immediate non-compliance taxation. The Dakua Ministry of War is now online and true. In radial year 989 Groove 3, our clients in the Dakua nest salvaged an interstellar spacecraft hull. Hull isotopes date the craft's construction 24,000 years ago, around the same time the fundament system dropped out of contact with our amiable Ecumen. Semantic Spike Praga. Mercenary explorers, disposable class, discovered an organism frozen in stasis deep within the hull. She claims to be Teox, a member of a proto-hive species. During debriefing, she provided records of the fall of the Ammonite civilization and vital intelligence about their motives, biology, and leadership of the Hive. Negative reinforcement. Bomb.axon 8x8 inflict. Over the past century, perimeter security units of the Ecumen Status Army have failed to halt Hive incursions on 17 separate worlds. All species of the Ecumen face extinction. Positive reinforcement. Reward. Axon, brackets 11x-VV2. Inspire. Decapitate, defer, promote Dakua strategic dicta for victory against the Hive. Identify supreme Hive leadership organisms, Aurash, Sathona, and Gyro. Target these entities with maximum theater overkill. Cadometric release authorized. Prosecute targets whenever they manifest. Hive cohesion will crumble. Total victory over the Hive will be achieved by clean sweep genocide. Enact impulse. Indora Vindicator. So that's confusing as butts. There's a lot to unpack.
It's confusing as butts, but it's got some really important points in there for sure.
So first thing to note, the Ecumen, kind of what are they? It's kind of this, as far as I see it, a confederation of different races, and the Dakua Ministry of War is almost like a robotic military force that doesn't necessarily govern them all, but it has a degree of control over what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. So it says all sorts of things about, you know, how there's got to be negative and positive reinforcements to the actions. And the action that they're engaging in is, you know, perimeter security units attend, stand by to assimilate new imperatives. They're sort of literally saying, okay, you now all have to follow this new order, and it's explaining the situation, which is, hey, someone out there found an interstellar craft. Inside, there's this person called Teox. She's talking about the Hive that have been going through and have murdered like 17 whole separate worlds worth of people. And this is important because everybody faces extinction at the hands of the Hive. Teox has given us key information about their leaders, about their biology, and about their motives, as well as more vital intelligence on top of that. Here's what we got to do. We need to completely secure strategic victory against the Hive. We need to eliminate their leaders, aka Oryx, Savathun, and Shivur-Raf, wherever we find them. Target these entities for maximum theater overkill. So in other words, the minute that they appear in war, it doesn't matter how proportionately you respond, you're going to send a disproportionate force, you can utterly crush them. This is kind of the closest challenge the sword logic has ever had, so to speak. So, Shivur-Raf, Savathun, and Oryx, they're going to get beaten back here really badly. And, you know, it even goes to the final endpoint with this computer program that they're running here in the Dakua War Ministry. And you can tell that it is kind of computer-like, because at the very beginning it says, the Dakua Ministry of War is now online and true.
Yeah.
You know, that's almost as though it's the line of code, right?
Activating itself, or being turned on.
Yeah, and literally it says at the very end, you know, prosecute targets wherever they manifest, Hive cohesion will crumble, total victory over the Hive will be achieved by clean sweep genocide. They're not going to stop until the Hive are completely wiped out, because their existence is threatened. It's as simple as that. And next comes the point at which shit really hits the fan for the Hive. Beneath a green fire sky in the throne world of King Oryx, our lords embraced. We, the Hive, watch as Savathun puts her arms around Shivur-Raf, and Shivur-Raf clasps forearms with Oryx, and Oryx takes Savathun by the shoulder. They are huge, and they burn with furious power. But this embrace is weakness, and we despise it. Never before have we despised our lords. Have they failed us? We, the Hive, have been driven back. World by world. I am at my end, Savathun says. I plot and plan, but I cannot gather enough bloodshed to feed my worm. And the harder I try, the hungrier it becomes. I slaughter and kill, Shivur-Raf says, but the harder I fight, the more my worm demands. I am, too, at my end. The Ecumen war angels have killed me so many times, Oryx says, that I dare not go out into the universe, lest I need my might to protect myself. My worm chews up my soul in hunger. Is this the end of our crusade? Are we, the Hive, unworthy to exist? Shivur-Raf puts down her great head. We should retire and gather our strength. Savathun closes her eyes in puzzled defeat. We should beg the worm, our gods, to tell us what to do. But King Oryx, who knows best the beauty of the final shape, roars at them. Have you learned nothing? Would you deny our purpose? Whatever we do, we will do by killing, by an act of war and might. This is not the final arbiter we serve. That violent arbiter, if we turn away from it, we deserve to be eaten. No, we must obey our natures. We must be long-sighted and cunning and strong. We must take this gift from our worms, gods, and... Oh god, wow, butchered that sentence. We must take this gift the worm our god has given us, this challenge, and find a way to keep existing. How will we feed our worms? Shivur-Raf asks. I know, says cunning Savathun. I know a way, but it won't work unless we are killing the Ecumen by the billions. How can we beat them? We cannot beat their strength, Shivur-Raf. We must infect their weaknesses. But they are lords of matter and physical law. I know a way, King Oryx says, but it will require great power. More power than any one of us can claim. Then kill me, says Shivur-Raf. And use that killing logic, the power you prove by killing something as mighty as me. So King Oryx took up his blade and beheaded Shivu-Arath. "And strangle me," says Savathun, holding a blade behind her back. "I'll use that killing logic, the cunning you proved by killing something as smart as me." But King Oryx turned with the speed and might of Shivu-Arath and beheaded Savathun before she could move. King Oryx was the first navigator with the map of death. These were true deaths, for they happened in the Sword World. Then he went to the worm named Akka. So shit's hit the fan, because in order to become more powerful and survive, Oryx just had to kill his two sisters. And this isn't like the death that Savathun originally dealt him. He's properly dead now. Sorry, they're properly dead now. They're gone. Nada. Nothing is going on with them anymore. At least we think. And he now has the power of those two beings that he's murdered. And keep in mind, they've been at war for 24,000 years. So he just killed some pretty freaking powerful people. And next, we see the results of this, which is another communication from the Ecumen. And this is the point at which shit really hits the fan for them, and I want everybody in the chat to guess what's going to happen next. And the card reads as follows.
This is great. What is going to happen now?
Yeah.
What is going to happen now that Oryx has killed both of his siblings and went to his, I guess, worm god to commune? So they're actual dead, not fake dead. Yeah, they made point of saying that they were true deaths.
Indeed. And Hockey Dan 94 got it first, where he says Oryx takes. So this is a very important point, but let's read the card to see if you're right. Emergency imperative, all militarized units attend. Gland 120 proof fight or flight encoding or face certain catastrophic defeat. The Ecumen Crisis Council is now online and true. Attention, as of radial 990 Groove 0, the Hive has launched a staggering counterattack across the Spinwood frontier. Perimeter, militia, and shocking fleets report total casualties. We anticipate total Ecumen disintegration and extinction within 220 years. Vigilance Spike EI attend. The Hive entity Oryx/Oryx is deploying a paracausal ontopathogenic weapon that infects and subverts Ecumen forces. This weapon operates on individual targets. Targets are abducted and returned as compliant Hive slaves with inexplicable and physically illegal abilities. All Ecumen units clients should immediately devote all economic and cognitive resources to countermeasure. Fight hard. We stop the Hive here or see our galaxy devoured. Enact Impulse, 10 by 10, Abayard, Berserker. So, shit just hit the fan. Oryx has officially discovered that paracausal power, the ability to take. And we see how he does this in the next card. I'm not going to pause for questions or anything, because the next card is directly something that should be read right after this.
Alright, continue.
Verse 3-8, King of Shapes. This is the coronation of Oryx, the taken king. It happened thus. In the cold abyss of the Sword World, King Alrush walked under the cloak of green fire. He walked through the sky, and the sky shuddered and froze beneath his feet. He walked until he found Akka, the worm of secrets, who was denying a truth until it became a lie. Akka, my god, worm of secrets, I am Oryx, sole king of the Hive. I have come to receive a secret. I want the secret power of the deep, which you hold. I give no secrets, said Akka, whose voice was code. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? Akka denies a truth. He denies a truth until it becomes a lie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the very interesting thing about this is wherever he says something, take it as the opposite, or anticipate it to be interpreted as something very different.
Okay.
So, I give no secrets, said Akka, whose voice was code. No, said Oryx. You give nothing. Giving is for the sky. You worship the deep, which asks that we take what we need. Akka said nothing. If he denied this truth, it might become false. So you can see what this is doing, you know, he's got to admit, yes, I do function by the law of the sword logic. So you can't say anything against this. And then, you know, it goes on from there. But you gave us your larvae, the worm, said Oryx. And that is why the worm devours us now, because it was given, not taken. So I must take whatever I need from you, although you are my god. Said Aka, you have not the strength. But this was a lie. Oryx had killed Savathun, his sibling, and Shivu-Arath, his sibling, and he had sword logic of killing them. Oryx, the first navigator, set upon his god with sword and his words, and cut Aka to pieces, and took from those pieces the secret of calling upon the deep. He wrote the secret on a set of tablets, which he called the Tablets of Ruin, and he wore them around his waist. Then Oryx said, now I may speak to the deep, the beautiful final shape. I will be the king of shapes. I will learn all of the secrets of our destiny. His speech to the deep is not recorded here, but it is known that he returned, and he said, now I am Oryx, the taken king, and I have the power to take life and make it my own. Then he went out into the universe and fought the Ecumen with his tablets, and the worm, his god, was pleased. So that is how originally Arash, who turned into Oryx, becomes Oryx. The transition from small little weak krill to crazy paracausal god has now been complete.
Yeah.
He is now full boss mode, and as a result, that's why all of a sudden the Ecumen are being beaten back, and it's a case of, oh crap, in 200 years, we are freaking gone. We're extinct, basically. That's his final stage, and this is the point at which he really starts to discover that power.
True. Also of note is that it's the first time the Tablets of Ruin are mentioned. And one of those tablets is something we encounter in the raid again when we are fighting Golgoroth.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, actually, is it? No. So these next two cards are actually my favorite two, I think, in the entire thing, just because of how awesome it gets. But yeah, Carved in Ruin is this next one. Oryx made war on the Ecumen for 100 years. By the way, this card, I'm just openly going to say it, will confuse a few of you, because it's not going to necessarily make sense. Oryx made war on the Ecumen Council for 100 years. At the end of those 100 years, he killed the Ecumen Council on the Fractal Wreath, and from their blood rose Shivu-Arath. I am war, she said, and you have conjured me back with war. Oryx was glad, for he loved Shivu-Arath. The Ecumen wailed in grief. So immediately, you're suddenly starting to realize that Oryx really is breaking the boundaries and starting to break the rules, because even though the true deaths that occurred within the Sword Realm have occurred, he's still been so powerful. He's able to edit the laws of reality so completely that simply by embodying what Shivu-Arath's nature was, which was to always seek war and to challenge of combat, that by the time he's completely conquered that, he's actually able to just summon her back.
Exactly.
So that's why it gets so confusing at this particular card, but it's really just a show of how freaking powerful Oryx is at this point. He's just one of those people where, you know how way back in the cards it says, you know, see how the universe shrieks in terror from you, or, you know, shrinks in terror rather? This is quite literally that. This is the universe saying, ah, God, okay, please, we'll give you what you want, we give you what you want. It's complying according to his absolute will. And in this case, his will is complete destruction, which is perfectly embodied by his sister, Shivu-Arath. So, scary, scary notion there, because potentially, and this is what I thought was going to happen with Malok or just any of the Taken in the April update, I thought that by inquiring and being totally knowledgeable, that we would actually get a scenario where someone would try to summon Oryx back with perfect cunning, which for me was always a bit of a terrifying thought, because we went through quite a bit of trouble to kill that son of a bitch, you know?
Exactly.
So, finding someone that powerful, and you know what, it's still a risk, because Savathun or Shivu-Arath, whoever claims the throne to the Hive, even if it's, say, Toland, and maybe he's the most terrifying prospect of them all, because he's the guy who you look at and you're like, yeah, that's the smartest one of those guys, basically.
Yeah.
All of them, suddenly, there's that question of, oh crap, could one of these guys potentially recreate this crazy god?
Yeah.
So, yeah, moving on with the rest of the card, though. Then Oryx and Shiva-Arath made war on the Ecumen for 40 years, and at the end of these 40 years, Oryx said to the Dakua nest, "Listen, I am jealous of my sibling Shiva-Arath. Help me kill her." And in desperation, they agreed. But he drove the Dakua nest into a trap, and they were made extinct, and from the ashes rose cunning Savathun, saying, "I am trickery, and you have conjured me back with trickery." Oryx was glad, for he loved Savathun. The Ecumen fled into the void. Then they made their war on the Ecumen for 1,000 years and exterminated them so wholly that nowhere except in this book are they remembered. This book and the mind of Teox, who was not found. And Savathun said, "King Oryx, how will we feed our worms? Did you use my plan?" Oryx told the Hive, "I am the taken king, and here is my law. You thrall, each of you will claw and scream and kill what you can. Take enough, killing to feed your worm and a little more to grow. Tithe the rest to the acolyte who commands you. You acolytes lead your thralls into battle. Take enough killing to feed your worm and a little more to grow, and take the tithe of the thrall you lead. Then tithe the remainder to the knight or wizard who commands you. Thus you pay tribute. You knights and wizards, lead your followers in battle. Take enough devastation to feed your worm, and a little more to grow, and take the tithe of your followers. Then take another portion, as much as you dare, and use it for your own purposes. But if it is too much, your peers will kill you and take it. Then tithe the remainder to the ascendant you serve. An ascendant will be those among the Hive who gather enough tribute to enter the netherworld. They will pay a tithe to those above them, and thus the tribute will flow up the chain, so that Savathun and Shiva-Arath and myself will be fed by a great river of tribute, and we will use this excess to feed our gods and study the deep, and thus all worms will be fed, as long as we continue our crusade. This is my law. I carve it thus, in ruin, Ayat. So this dedicates the entire structure of how the Hive Society now works under the Taken King. All based on this entire idea of tithing up all of your devastation.
Pyramid Scheme 101. You got it, chat. That's what Oryx did.
Much.
Yeah. So one of the questions that showed up in chat that I think it's important to address is people are asking how the fuck Teox lived so long when the Proto-Hive have such short lifespans. Teox was a mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means she partook of a transformative substance that changed her body into something that lives forever.
Lives for a very long time.
Very long time. And she was in like cryostasis inside of a busted up ship.
Yeah. It's also well worth noting that she has had some kind of involvement with both the Leviathan and the Traveler in her time. So it's not totally clear, but I don't know if there's an age limit on Guardians, right? Teox may have been one of the first individuals to ever be empowered by the light. An interesting idea that I had. Yeah, like an interesting idea that someone threw at me the other day, and I do not know if this can at all be called true, just because it's so outlandish. But somebody once said, "What if Teox is actually Alpha Lupi?" Which I don't buy personally, but it's still an interesting idea.
Yeah.